Ron.
Yeah.
Why didn't you say it the first time I said Ron?
Because it's pronounced Aaron.
You done messed up, Ron!
Hey everybody, welcome. Welcome to more SBTV, where every day is a great day not to be in a cult. I'm Natalie Webster, and I'm from Life After a Cult, and I'm helping to cover for our friend Aaron Smith-Levin while he is currently in jail. Hello to everybody in the chat, and thank you, mods, for being here. Today, I have a very special guest that I'm very excited to talk to. We are really going to dig into quite a bit. And of course, this involves Scientology. This involves Scientology's practice of fair game, which Owen Hubbard said that you can lie, you can cheat, you can plant drugs on people. You could do whatever it takes to silence somebody who is critical of Scientology. And in truth, doesn't even have to be critical of Scientology. Somebody who opposes something that Scientology is doing, as is the case with the Save the Garden, which you have heard about. We're going to talk more about that. We've talked earlier. I had Brooks Gibbs on the channel. He's going to be with me again this evening, talking about ways that he and his team have been fair game. So we have a lot that we're going to get into. I'm going to bring Brooks in here. Welcome, Brooks. Thanks for being here.
Good to see you, Natalie.
You too. Really appreciate this. Now, you work in conflict resolution. You teach conflict resolution. You teach nonviolence in so many ways in this area of conflict resolution. What do you think is happening right now with Aaron? What do you think is going through his head with everything he's been through and now being in jail?
Well, I'm glad he's getting over the fear of jail. You know, he was saying, I visited him a couple times, been emailing back and forth as well. And, you know, it's really not, he's in a kind of a section where it's not very scary. And it's pretty comfortable, but it's not where he wants to be, obviously. This is not like good. It's not like a reward. This is a disciplinary action that the judge did for him. He, in many people's opinion, he made a mistake of a retaliatory reaction, as you know. And so I think he's really been analyzing, you know, knowing he didn't do anything wrong, believing he didn't do anything wrong, but then looking at this critically, non-emotionally, and be able to say, why are they saying I did something wrong? You know, the people slammed the door, you know, they slammed my foot with the door in front of the bank building there at the Information Center of Scientology on Cleveland. And I leaned into that one guy who was part of OSA. And then I threw child chalk. You know, so those things replay over in his head again and again as he evaluates. And I think the things that we've been discussing is how we have to be above reproach in every single way as a protester, to always let the truth be so that he's a victim of Scientology. He was a victim for 30 years, 17 years, of course, with the Sea Org, the most committed sect of the organization. He was ultimately disenfranchised. He was disconnected from his brother, lost a relationship, didn't be able to maintain that relationship before his brother died, estranged from his parents, etc. As you know, kids were not able to know their grandparents. You know his whole story. And so he has to understand that's why I protest. And then the second thing he has to say, when I present myself to the world, am I presenting myself in a way that's an aggressor or the aggrieved? And this is what I've really challenged him. And this is for all protesters, by the way. You can never be in a position of being identified as an aggressor, the perpetrator. You have to have zero hint. And Gandhi was big about this. Of course, Martin Luther King learned from him in his nonviolent, peaceful protest, be able to say, the battle's won before it's fought in the preparation phase. And so Gandhi, as well as Martin Luther King, they would have these rehearsals where they would have, in a role-play environment, people push, yell, spit, you know, drag, physically and verbally abuse the individual, not to the point of being sent to the hospital, but to try to evoke out of the protester a retaliatory desire. So that if you could have sort of mind over matter, if you could be stronger than your emotions and endure the hardship of provocation, then when it's game day, when it's really time, you're not going to throw chalk as a reaction. You're going to do everything you can to not lean into a guy. Do everything you can not to be identified as a perpetrator. And so these are the things he's been thinking about deeply. I've been helping him think through. He really is having a perfect reset moment that I think is going to allow him to emerge as a leader, not just for protests, but as an outspoken critic of this huge multi-billion-dollar institution known as the Church of Scientology. He really is a leading voice, and so he needs to be sharper. He needs to be more articulate. He needs to be prepared better so he doesn't find himself in this losing situation.
Yeah, that is something in Scientology, it's called bull baiting, to a kind of degree of what you're explaining, where we would do these drills where you could say anything, you couldn't touch the person, but the whole idea was to flatten buttons. Scientology used that in an abusive way, but I can see what you're talking about in terms of just preparing. And as someone who grew up in Scientology, I can tell you, and then who's been protesting, I think that the Natalie, if I'd have protested when I first left Scientology or at a different part of my healing from it, I would have approached it very differently. I feel fortunate that I learned so much more, and being out in front of those buildings, I've not been able, I don't feel like I've done a great job of describing it. It's not that, like, I have no fear of what Scientology may or may not do, but being there in that space where so much heartache and the conditioning, being held against our will, locked in rooms, some people were physically abused, but the emotional and literally being held captive. If we wanted to leave, we had someone assigned to us who had watched us 24/7. You would be on watch. And it's even more of a challenge, I think, in going in and putting ourselves into that situation again, and while also still healing from the trauma of Scientology and those things that maybe make us have more of a short fuse because of what we went through. But what you're saying, it makes so much sense as that being kind of the goal and something that could be more effective in a way. It's difficult. It's hard, I think, for a lot of people. I mean, imagine, I think anyone else, if you had an abuser in your life and you went and you actually faced them on a regular basis, it stirs up a lot. And being able to do that and show up differently and not reactive is a challenge. But I think it's such an amazing goal to have or experience when you get there and you can do that. When you
I,
say,
I
because
think,
you've talked to him quite a few times, like can you
yeah.
explain more about kind of like what's going through his head?
Well, I think we humans make a mistake of projecting our victim mindset on someone who we've never met or have any knowledge or interaction with. It's the equivalent to dad having a bad day at work, coming home, the dog's in the way, and he kicks the dog. And the dog's like, "What the heck? I didn't do anything." It's a projected anger or it's a
Yeah.
projected reaction. And I think that's in the psychology literature, it's called a cognitive distortion, meaning it's a improper way of thinking. That the individual, though they wear the Scientology uniform, they were not your
Hmm.
abuser,
Hmm.
right? And so
Yeah.
to target them with any aggression whatsoever is a misplaced target. And that's
Hmm.
why this gentleman who was wearing a mask and saying that he had respiratory issues somehow by this child cornstarch chalk, which is a tactic that Scientology does, the equivalent to, like, I don't know, whoever the basketball player is, King James or whatever his name is. I don't even know sports. What's that guy? LeBron, right? He
LeBron.
like overreacts if someone basically breathes with their nose breath on his shoulder. And then he gets a foul. I mean, that's what they're trained to do. Jenna explains this in depth, that they're
Yeah.
overreacting to provocations to make it appear as though they're the real victims, that being
Yes.
Scientology Sea Org member. But we have to realize that they're a misled, misguided, defectively discipled victim themselves. And to lose that perspective
Mm.
is to lose the upper hand, is to lose this sense of compassion for that individual. We want to win them out. They're not our enemy. They are not our abuser. This is what I would say to
Hmm.
someone. I have no history with Scientology, but that's what I would help, someone like
Yeah.
yourself or Aaron to be able to say they too are deceived. So don't project that, um, and because it's actually this guy who's charging him for battery. It's not the Church of Scientology. The state has taken up this gentleman, the Sea Org member's case. And so it's actually him as an individual who's now saying he's been battered. And that's how he views it. And that's, so that'd be the first thing I would say.
Yeah. Because you've had a few conversations. You've met with him, in the way that he can be visited there in jail. And I think we have some videos and things that we're going to look at as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually went to the jail and tried to use my clergy card because I'm ordained pastor. And I ended up talking with the chaplain, and she explained how things have changed over the years, and you have to be registered chaplain. So I'm becoming a registered chaplain, but not till April of next year. So that'll be too late. I'm still going to go through the process, but I went ahead and communicated with him via video as well as lots of emails. Now, this video I'd like to show you is him getting clarity on why he protests. I really challenged him, know why you do what you do. And let's watch Aaron in his own words on this video. It's very short. Really come up with, in a sense, a reason why. It's the why he does what he does. Go ahead.
All right. Can you also, I've got a couple comments in the chat. Some people are having a hard time hearing you. I just want to make sure. Yeah. I hear you fine, but a few have said that you're more on the quiet side.
All right. So sorry. I'll work on that.
All right. All right. So this video that we're about to look at, you're saying the question you posed to Aaron was why he protests. Okay. And this is the Stop Scientology.
Yep.
All right. Here we go.
Smith-Levin, and I'm a former Scientologist, and I'm in the Pinellas County Jail at the moment. I work to expose the abuses of Scientology because of the destruction that Scientology wreaks to its individual members and the families of its individual members, and to almost everyone who gets raised in Scientology or joins Scientology. And the abuse is financial, it is physical, it is mental, and Scientology is at its core an abusive, coercive, and dishonest organization. So I do protest against Scientology because of the abuses. However, I also believe that Scientology is incapable, because of the nature of the dishonesty and the deception of the organization, of just getting rid of the abuse and somehow becoming a better organization. I think it is at its core an abusive, deceptive, dishonest organization, and that is why I protest against it.
All right, which leads us to that website, stopscientology.com. I worked with Aaron to actually come up with a very clear direction for his future protests and really leading, I think, by example of how to do this in a way that's wise with clarity. When Martin Luther King was in jail, he did the Birmingham letter from jail. And this is actually what Aaron wrote from jail. So let's go ahead into that document and scroll all the way down. And people can read this themselves. And we're going to be placing this, hopefully, as a op-ed piece in the Tampa Bay Times. Can you hear me better, by the way?
I believe so, yes. And many people are saying they could hear you fine. It was just a few people that could not.
Yeah, I don't know what the problem. So read the letter that explains why we protest Scientology. All right, so this is actually from Clearwater Jail. No better time than now. I'll read it on behalf of Aaron. As I sit in this Clearwater jail cell, wrongfully detained for an incident that exposes the biases in our local justice system, I feel compelled to speak out. I was recently arrested on battery charges during a peaceful protest outside of Scientology's flag building. The reality is, an employer for Scientology attempted to destroy our protest chalk art by pouring scalding hot water over our demonstration and eventually poured water on me. In response, I threw harmless chalk dust, cornstarch in his direction. The police officer who responded filed battery charges against me and assured me that he would do the same against the employee. Yet I was the only one arrested and charged while the aggressor walked free. Additionally, while I stood at the door of their downtown information center asking staff to tell Flavio Lugli to call his parents, whose desperate attempts to reach him are blocked by Scientology's disconnection policy, another employee slammed the door on my foot, causing me to stumble into a second employee. No one on their side was hurt, only my foot was injured, yet that incident was added to the charges against me. This isn't just a personal injustice. It is a perfect example of Scientology's strategy to suppress protest instead of facing the abuses we are talking about. Our protests will end only when those abuses stop. Aaron continues writing from jail. He says, I was raised in Scientology and served 17 years in the Sea Org, the group's most dedicated religious order. I left after seeing its destructive side. As an advocate for survivors, I have watched too many lives ruined by policies that put control above compassion. My arrest is simply the latest result in their fair game approach, targeting critics to avoid accountability. I work to expose Scientology's abuses because of the destruction it wreaks on its members and their families. Almost everyone who is raised in it or joins it suffers financial, physical, and mental abuse. At its core, Scientology is an abusive, coercive, and dishonest organization. I do not believe it is capable of simply removing the abuses and becoming a better group because the dishonesty and deception are baked in. Still, I protest to warn others and hopefully keep more lives from being destroyed. You see how clear he's being now of why he does what he does? So this is not shock jock, right? So he continues and actually identifies 7. These are the 7 core abuses I will keep protesting until they stop. Number 1, the no childhood doctrine abuse. Scientology subjects children to age-inappropriate training, auditing, and confidential materials because the church teaches there is no such thing as a child, only an immortal thetan, which is like a spirit, trapped in a small body. And from early childhood, kids are placed on the adult bridge to total freedom, subjected to invasive auditing sessions that probe sexual experiences, past life traumas, personal secrets, required to study upper level OT if they get that far. And a 6-year-old is treated as a full spiritual adult, expected to confront the same existential psychological content as a 60-year-old veteran. And it stems directly from L. Ron Hubbard's assertion that a child is simply an adult who is in the condition of must reach. That's from HCOB 13, September 1960. Rejecting any need for development safeguards, the result is profound psychological harm, confusion, premature sexualization, suppressed emotions, and a stolen childhood damage that lasts a lifetime. Will you play video? It says 1 and 2 there, which is a little bit of a short comment about this particular abuse.
Absolutely.
Information.
Are you?
Let me put it back there and
Gotcha.
see.
Yeah, start over. Yeah, maybe I messed it up.
Let me try it again.
Isn't that weird? I'll push play, pause play. Yeah, it's not working, is it?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. Do you want to maybe summarize it?
It's the same thing. I just wanted your comment on number 1. Now, he was telling me that they backed up quite a bit in the child labor laws. Like, there's no cadets or whatever I forget the words he used, but you can take the screen off and we just chat real quick about number 1, age inappropriate information practices. Exposing children to things that they are not capable of processing or understanding. It leaves them very confused. And that was like the first abuse he is against. Any thoughts about that?
Very much so. In Scientology, in the training routines is one that really comes to mind. And when you're bull baiting, when you're trying to flatten these buttons. As a child, I can remember being told sexual phrases because I would react to it. And then they'd say it over and over and over again until you do not react to it, until you show no reaction. And it's presented to you as, well, when you're a Scientology auditor, you're going to need to be able to handle these different situations. But there's not, what's completely lost is that, well, should a child be speaking to an adult about things of a sexual nature, especially things that would be considered to be sinful? In Scientology, they're called overts and withholds, where why would a child be expected to get out of an adult things that they did that Scientology would be considered immoral, and is often in a sexual way? When I was a young teenager and I was being trained in Scientology, part of my job was to be an ethics officer, to handle ethics. And I remember having to, as part of my training, deal with grown men. Keep in mind, I was 15 years old, and men in their 30s, 40s, sit them down and handle them, as I was told, because they were fellow trainees like myself, except they were masturbating and that wasn't allowed while you were training. And I had to get the exact, in Scientology, the exact, what they say, time, place, form, and event of what happened, and listen to it, to not just listen to it, but pull it out of them and document it and write it down. This is the type of thing, and that's even kind of a mild version of what can go on. But that was my personal experience with it.
I know Jenna tells stories about while she's on the e-meter or whatever, holding the cans, as they say, like she had to undo her belt or something like that. And it was very uncomfortable. Stories like that she felt was inappropriate, unnecessary, etc. Maybe because the current is flowing through the body and they needed, that belt
Yeah.
loose. Um, it it's just sad that there are kids that go to this thing and they have to go through the training. And when I say kids, it's even 12, 13, 14, 15, 16-year old, 16, 17-year olds are still very young. And many of them, because of approval addictions, want to really impress their parents. And so they dive really deep. I think Aaron actually was one of these types because he became an extremely praised auditor, from what I understand, and his ability to understand the tech was sort of a prodigy like. Same with his brother. And so you got that approval bait, right? That the child,
Mm.
because he wants to get approval, he wants to perform perfectly well. And just the pressure to perform as a perfectionist really makes a child extremely vulnerable. And then the shame that happens once you're not approved, and then the rejection that he experienced, et cetera. Like these are like big, like yo-yo emotions that a young heart is not strong enough to endure. And so I would just add that to like the age inappropriate practices, information, teachings that they have to subject themselves to, all because there is no such thing as childhood, right? It's just an adult in a child's body, I guess. Um,
Oh,
great. Let's
exactly. Exactly.
go ahead and play
Maybe
AA
there is.
1 and 2. I reloaded it for you, but go
All
ahead.
right. That's exactly it. There is no, you are a big being in a small body. And that, I can remember thinking that's some of what like got me into the Sea Organization, because when you're a kid, when I signed my Sea Org contract, I was 13 years old, and thought, well, wow, this is a place where I can, not be held back by my age. And it's sold to you in that way. And at that age, at 13, you do not have the life experience to make a billion-year commitment. You don't have the life experience to be in a relationship at 13, let alone sign a billion-year contract. And I know of many who signed their Sea Organization contract at 7, at younger ages. Not to say it's legally binding, but you're still putting a child in a position of believing that they will come back lifetime after lifetime to work for Scientology and dedicate their lives to doing that. And when you grow up, you're being raised and indoctrinated that that's what you should do with your life, that it's way more purposeful to do that than to go to college or do anything else. Your options become very limited. And what you said earlier about Aaron getting that validation, that's kind of how they keep you going in it, because you do get validated for being an adult, basically. Now, you said which video? We're doing the 1 and 2?
Yep.
All right.
Subjecting children to age inappropriate practices, procedures, and information tied to their belief that there's no such thing as a child. And then it would be also a part of that. Well, this would be a separate item, but I'll just spit it out there. Refusing to let members report crimes to the police. I realize it sounds like it's a completely different item, but it's also, in my mind, tied to that age issue, but it is a totally separate item. So anyway, exposing children to age inappropriate practices and information.
So what we're seeing is Aaron get really, really focused on his grievances, what his offenses are, what the abuses he's articulating. He's whittled them down to 7 primary abuses that he is wanting to see stopped. And that's why I think this, when bad things happen to you, like being thrown in jail for a week to 10 days, there's a couple ways you can look at it. You could say, oh, this is horrible. You could catastrophize, right? And say, oh no, this is awful and awfulizing. I mean, that's kind of like our nature. Or you can be a resilient minded person and say, you know what, the worst thing that ever happened to me can be the best thing for me. I'm going to see the upside to this letdown. I'm going to see the good in this bad. I'm going to use this as an opportunity. It's essentially, I'm either going to be bored doing nothing, or I'm going to apply my mind to improving the task before me, which is stopping Scientology from abusing others like they've abused me. I mean, that's what Aaron would say. And so that's what I love. I love seeing him doing this, because to me, this is like, it's a masculine. I think it's masculine. It's like, that's what is awesome. It's the strength of will that I think everyone can tap into. It's a very powerful kind of frame of mind, and it as opposed to aggressive, aimless guerrilla psychology that is destructive and degrading and just wanting to retaliate without any aim or purpose. I mean, that's awful. That's what gets people in jail, by the way, because retaliation is almost always worse than the original provocation. And that's why you are called the perpetrator, when really you see yourself as the victim. But because you retaliated worse than you were originally aggrieved or provoked, in the eyes of those watching, you're guilty. And so it's taming that retaliatory beast that's in all of us, and transcending that and saying, how could I be more civilized, more sophisticated, more strategic, more aimed in my approach to stop Scientology from their abuses? So I love that. Let's go back to the document if you can, and we'll look at 2. He kind of alluded to it a little bit in the recording. Item number 2 is what he identified as the in-house justice abuse. Scientology, Aaron continues writing, forbids members from reporting crimes to outside law enforcement, requiring rape, molestation, assault, and other criminal acts to be handled exclusively through internal ethics officers and committees of evidence. Victims are pressured or ordered to keep silent, told that going to the police is a high crime that can result in declaration as a suppressive person and total disconnection from family and friends. This policy, rooted in L. Ron Hubbard's directives that, quote, justice may stay within the church to protect its image and avoid in theta, which is, in his definition, negative information, routinely shields predators, prevents proper investigation, leaves victims without legal recourse or professional support. The result is a protected class of abusers inside the organization and a trail of silenced victims whose suffering is compounded by enforced isolation. So I love that he puts children first. We're doing this to protect children, right? That's the first abuse that we have got to fight against. Okay. That's why we protest. That's why we write. That's why he has a dedicated YouTube channel to educate the public, first and foremost, because it hurts children. It introduces them to concepts and ideas and pressures that they're too young to handle. But second, it also shields real abuse that's going on because they internally try to handle these things. And so now we're getting, I think this week has really allowed him to focus with absolute precision. What is the issues? And what did you
Yeah.
think, your thoughts about number two?
I think that is absolutely accurate. And, as a victim of rape that was covered up by Scientology, you're told that it's the greatest good because law enforcement, I can clearly remember being told, we don't want to have the police here on the base. I was at the Blue Buildings. We don't want to have, it's not good to have the police here. It could create a situation for Scientology, and you don't want to do that, do you? And also, you must have done something to make that happen. And that's their take. Because you did something to make it happen, it's your fault. You should not be bringing down, bringing the law, bringing the police, bringing an investigation to Scientology's front step. That's the biggest reason, that's the biggest justification in how they convince you that it's okay to cover up. And in my situation, I was so traumatized that I couldn't think straight to even, this is how I got out of the Sea Organization. They made a deal with me that if I said nothing about what happened, that they would let me leave. I wouldn't even have to do a routing form or anything to leave the Sea Organization, which I wanted to leave the Sea Organization. And I took that deal because, one, I wanted to leave. Secondly, it was easier for me and to process in my young 20-something-year-old brain that, well, it's better to be, like they basically, they told people back where I was living that I had an affair, that I had, willingly done this. And I can remember thinking at the time, I'd rather be seen as somebody who was immoral, or at the time I thought like a whore, than a victim. Because I was raised my entire life that the last thing you could ever be is a victim. You can be a lot of things in Scientology, but you cannot be a victim. And it makes sense because so much of the ways that we were victimized was by Scientology, was because of that those rules would protect in that way. And it's so twisted how they use that. And they would rather protect these perpetrators, violent perpetrators, than have the police come do an investigation, than involve law enforcement. It's mind-boggling when I look back on it. But I agree with them completely. This is something that could absolutely be changed if they wanted to, that they could stop doing. Because what comes of it? That person has to deal with that trauma for years. I know I did, and I know many who have. And how is that worth keeping law enforcement away from Scientology? It makes no sense. But I agree with them completely on that being a point of why it's definitely part of why I protested as well, and why I still talk about my experience and do my channel on YouTube.
Hmm. One of the things that I was, sharing with Aaron while he's in jail, I quoted him actually, Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from Birmingham jail. It's a famous, in the protest
Mm,
literature or the peace studies or nonviolent uh, uh, resistance, it's a very important document. And he says something that I think is phenomenal. It says, this is Martin Luther King Jr. He says, in any nonviolent campaign, there are four basic steps. Number one, collection of the facts to determine whether injustices are alive, which is what Aaron did, with these 7 items of abuses. Number two, negotiation to try to challenge the abuser to stop abusing, and we'll stop protesting, right? People have done that for years. I think of all the work that was done in the late 90s and the 2000s with, especially after Lisa McPherson passed, and the incredible organization and hard work and protest that Mark Bunker and team and everyone that was involved in that era just continued to try to air these same grievances, and negotiation failed. Thus, protests continue. So the first is get the facts straight, collection of the facts. Second is try to negotiate. And if that fails, number three, self-purification. That's so interesting. I know that may be a term that no one likes in, ex-Scientology, because they have the purification rundown, right? If I remember correctly.
yeah.
But this is an idea of like basically in scripture, they say, search me, try me, show me if there's any wicked way in me, and then lead me in the way of everlasting. In other words, self-reflection is such a core competency of an emotionally healthy individual that they can say, am I wrong in any of this? Do I have ill motives? Am I unbalanced? Am I making a mountain out of a molehill? Do I have my facts straight? You're just doing a lot of introspection, which I think Aaron's doing a lot this week. And I think we all need to do from time to time to be able to say, am I projecting my anger or my victimization on individuals that don't deserve that type of, treatment? But the fourth and final thing, after we do all that work, get the facts straight, try to negotiate, and if to no avail, get your heart right, right? Get your heart right, get your mind straight. And then number 4 is direct action, which is either a YouTube channel, which is direct action, educating the public, open it up to the world, or protesting, nonviolent protesting. And Martin Luther King says in his letter, we have gone through all of these steps in Birmingham. And so I just asked Aaron, have you gone through all of these steps? Can we learn from guys? I'm not saying he's a Martin Luther King Jr., but I'm saying like he's doing the work of peaceful resistance, and yet he's caught up in being viewed as someone who's aggressive or violent. And so we have to go back to the drawing board and say, how does anyone think I'm any different than a peaceful person? And then that's really good. I guess we can move to item number 3, which is abuse number 3 on the document. And by the way, this is all can be found at stopscientology.com. Now, there are many websites in Scientology.org and, obviously SPTV Foundation. And eventually, this website is just housing this document that's sort of like kind of a letter, as well as some training opportunities. But all the other websites that are in the network will be, cross-pollinated and cross-promoted because everyone's doing what they think that they should. I just challenged Aaron to do some hard work. He came up with this, and then I solidified it as a sort of a call to action, as a location online that could be read, and hopefully it'll be published in the Tampa Bay Times. Number 3, religious visa fraud. Scientology recruits foreign nationals on an R1 religious worker visas with the promise of spiritual training and ministerial duties, then immediately assigns them to janitorial, renovation, and construction work on church properties while paying them pennies and confiscating their passports. And these staff members, often from vulnerable countries, are told that they're fulfilling sacred religious service, yet they spend years scrubbing toilets, painting ideal orgs, and doing manual labor under Sea Org conditions. When they object or try to leave, they are threatened with being declared suppressive, losing their visa status, and deportation. This practice, documented in countless affidavits and U.S. government investigation, turns a legitimate religious worker program into a pipeline for coerced, near unpaid labor, while the church avoids normal employment and immigration laws. This results in modern indentured servitude hidden behind the shield of religious freedom. Let's go ahead and have you play clip number 3, where he shares a little bit more on this.
All right.
Bringing them here under false pretenses that they're going to be a highly trained auditor, they're going to do this, but then they're here on a religious worker visa, but they're set, cleaning bathrooms in the hotel, which is not religious work. And I don't. Yeah. So basically just violating, labor trafficking and human trafficking laws, and under deceit and false pretense.
I appreciated him making that. Now that's item number 3, I believe, and that's a vulnerable population. Those who are not, first language not being English, and then getting promised for something which only ends up being a mirage. You constantly chase this great reward, but it is forever out of reach, and it's heartbreaking. Any thoughts on this, Natalie?
I saw this so much and I didn't understand at the time, especially when I was in the Sea Organization, or even when I was doing training prior to that, because I was training amongst Sea Org members from all over the world. And later on, when I started to learn more about how this was done and how this was abused, it kind of connected some dots for me, because I could remember meeting people, because again, my job was, when I was being trained to be an ethics officer, you'd have to help people work through different situations. And I remember there were two specific people from other countries where they actually voiced that they don't feel they can freely communicate because they have no way of leaving. They have no way of getting home. They live here, they work here, they eat here. Like, there's nowhere to go. They are from another country. They have no other option. And of course, they got in trouble for saying that. That was considered an out point in Scientology. And an enemy line, which is what L. Ron Hubbard called basically anything that was against Scientology or that challenged an idea of belief. Because in Scientology, there's no, let's discuss this concept and see, could it work? Could it not work? Does it work for me? Do I accept it? Do I not accept it? That's something that Scientology claims. But in reality, you were given heavy indoctrination if you disagree. They have a thing called false data stripping, where you're basically, the idea or the thought you have, like that you should be allowed to go home to your home country, you're somehow wrong. You're holding on to some false information about that. There are just many different indoctrination tools that I now see them as that, because that's what they were. That at the time I didn't see it that way, because I believed that Scientology was only doing good. And if I couldn't see how what they were doing was good, or if I thought that, well, actually, I don't like that, that I'm missing the bigger picture. I'm just one little part of this. And there's obviously things that I don't know about it. And now I know that's not the case at all. But my heart breaks for people, because you're right. It's such a vulnerable position to be in, where you're working for Scientology, you're living there, you're eating there, and you can't even leave the country because they take your passport.
And that's worth protesting. I mean, if that was just the only grievance, that would be worth protesting, and that would be worth making a lot of noise about and investigating. And I remember sitting down with the county commissioner of a couple months ago here in Pinellas County, and he says, Brooks, if I could just have some evidence of this, then we could prosecute. And so, that's what I bring back to Aaron and some other people. And I would say, I know when you were in there, you saw it. And I know we here locally, because we're all in Clearwater here. Okay. So people
Yeah.
talk to us at coffee shops downtown and when we're interacting. And, Scientologists who are still sort of connected, but really wanting to leave, they share and leak some information. But for a proper case to be brought for a violation of labor laws and human trafficking, expired visa abuse, et cetera, well, that's a fraud that needs to be exposed, but with good evidence. And so there is a small team that's working on that. And that's worth protesting. I think that's my main point. All right. Item number 4 that he identified, he calls it the enforced disconnection abuse.
Mm.
Scientology orders members to permanently cut off all contact with parents, children, siblings, and lifelong friends the moment these loved ones are labeled suppressive persons, usually for criticizing the church or leaving it. Refusal to disconnect is itself declared a suppressive act, resulting in the obedient member losing their own family, job, marriage, and spiritual future. This is not a rare occurrence or a personal choice. It is a mandatory policy enforced through ethics interviews, security checks, and written orders, rooted in LRH's 1965 directive that suppressive connections must be severed or the member themselves becomes suppressive. Disconnection is used as the ultimate weapon to keep people in line and silence dissent. The result is thousands of shattered families, parents who never see their children again, and children who grow up believing their own mother or father is an enemy of mankind, all because one person dared to question Scientology. And I could tell you, Natalie, this is the one particular abuse that is the reason why Jill, my wife, and myself are involved in helping ex-Scientologists be successful in their efforts and to do it properly, legally, with great success. That's what, our hope, because we've seen the damage of disconnection, and it's just like the worst possible thing. It's just awful. And so why don't we play clip, what was that, number 4? Yeah, let's play clip 4. He expands on this a little.
Is appropriate to completely object to the idea of a enforced disconnection policy instead of Scientology informing you about what their beliefs are regarding suppressive persons so that you could truly just use it to your own benefit as you saw fit and not an ethics officer ordering you to cut off a family member, or else everyone's going to cut you off.
You know, he was making a distinction between, you know, them recommending, just like any religion would, please be careful who you hang out with, because
Hmm.
you know, as my Texan dad, we used to say, you lie down with dogs, you rise up with fleas. You know, you become a summation of the 10 people you hang out with. And so almost every religious system says if you want to grow in our religion, you need to be able to separate yourself from others on some level, and be careful that they're not a negative influence. And when you're strong, then engage. Well, he's saying, you know, that'd be fine if that was a recommendation, but these are actually
Hmm.
orders from those who are in authority over them, and there's very real world consequences if you disobey the disconnection orders. And he says that's just crossing the line and so damaging.
Absolutely. It is one of the biggest, I agree. It's one of the most damaging things in Scientology because you're destroying families and friendships and relationships. And it is demanded of you. It's an all or nothing, you know, and that's very much the viewpoint in Scientology. You're with us or you're against us. It's part of the black and white cult thinking. And when I left Scientology, I lost well, basically most of the friends I had because they were Scientologists. And they were forced to disconnect from me. I had friends very close to me. They were pressured and told, look, if you do not cut ties with Natalie, you're not going to be able to communicate with your children who are in the Sea organization. You're not going to be able to maintain those connections. They will need to disconnect from you. And I would never expect a friend of mine to cut ties with me, you know, and lose touch with their children. And it puts people in this weird situation because they don't want to cut ties with not just me or people who leave Scientology, not just because of the relationship, but just they know, I think they know and they feel it in their bones that this is wrong. No one should have that much control over you. No one should be dictating who you are allowed to speak to and who you are not allowed to speak to. And this is a regular occurrence in Scientology, and it involves a lot of emotional blackmail. And I know many people who, even some who are still in or maintaining their good standing in Scientology, who completely have left in their heart and in their soul and in their mind, but they physically have to still pretend to be going along out of fear that their kids will be cut off from them. That's why it took me 2 years to leave, because I was trying to get as many of my family members to leave as well. You know, I had to go to great lengths to get my daughter out from Clearwater, right there at Flag. I had to, she was, it was a whole thing. I've shared this story before, but basically, I had to even lie to her to get her out, because if they found out I had left Scientology, they would have sent her anywhere. She would have been forced to cut ties with me and our entire family. We had 3 generations of our family in Scientology. So this very much is a massively real issue that destroys families, that destroys individuals, the heartbreak. Oh,
Mm.
the mothers, fathers too, but for some reason it's the mothers that gets me more, who have lost touch with their children, who cannot, you know, Flavio's family, who cannot reach them, who cannot communicate, who cannot hold them, who cannot see them. I mean, can you imagine losing a child
Mm.
to Scientology, to an organization? It's
It's the cruelest.
unbelievable.
It's the cruelest thing on earth. You know, there's been a lot of research in attachment theory. Attachment theory is what think of what twins had. You know, it's what Aaron and
Yeah.
his brother had. It's when you could be clear across the other side of the country from your twin or your loved one, your spouse, your child, and something happens and there's a disturbance in the force. It's called quantum entanglement. This is actually science. And the quantum realm is really the Wild West in science, but it goes beyond space and time. And when something happens to one in California, the other attached might feel it in Florida and know that something's wrong. And that's why confirmation is key. You're on my mind. I've been dreaming about you. I've been thinking about you. How's it going? Do you need any help? Can I pray for you? What's going on? And I mean, my son's in Hawaii right now. And when my heart is stirred during the day, I immediately text him and say, where are you at? What's going on? And without that communication, detachment happens. And that's like, imagine super gluing two by fours together and then ripping them apart. The consequence is splintered and shattered pieces, scarred. And that's what this disconnection policy does. It rips attached people, which is human torture. It's absolutely unfathomable. It's awful. And I'm sorry you almost went through it. And I'm sure in some levels you did. We know Aaron certainly did. And it's just it's worth protesting, wouldn't you think? Because the
100%.
seven that he's come up with, these 7 abuses, it really rallies the troop to say, which one motivates you to come out and hold a sign for? Which one are you going to say, this is my issue that I'm taking up and I'm fighting the Church of Scientology on? Because everyone needs to get their thinking clean and focused to say, this is why I protest. It's just part of refining this entire community of activists against this institution. All right, shall we go to number 5? We just have, yep, 3 left. The top-down physical abuse. Scientology's leadership, starting with Miscavige himself, has created and maintained a culture where physical violence is routine and expected. Dozens of high-ranking former executives, many with decades inside the Sea Org, have publicly described Miscavige's slapping, choking, punching, and throwing people across rooms, often in front of witnesses. Lower-level staff are then encouraged or ordered to imitate the tone. Beatings, hair pulling, shoving into walls, public humiliations are used as, quote, ethics handling, end quote, or simply to assert dominance. Victims are told it is their own fault for pulling it in, and reporting the abuse internally is treated as a high crime. This is not an isolated rage. It is deliberate management style that starts at the very top and trickles down through every level of the organization. The result is an environment where fear of physical harm is a daily reality for thousands of dedicated members who signed up for spiritual freedom and found themselves living in terror of their own leaders. Why don't you play that clip? I believe it's clip number 5. It's short.
To physical abuse, because L. Ron Hubbard does say somewhere that it's basically okay for 2 Sea Org members to get into a physical fight as long as it's in the purpose of trying to get their job done, and that should not be okay. That should not be okay.
I'm encouraged by him being mindful of the physical abuse. He was speaking. By the way, all these videos are from him in jail. We have video footage of him there sharing these things, and we're able to capture it. Now, he was saying that the good Sea Org members would say, well, there's no more physical aggression in the Sea Org than it is maybe in the military. Like it's essentially on par. Like they're rough in the military. It's like boot camp. You get screamed at, yelled at, spat on, whatever, when someone's yelling in your face. It's no different. But he would say, no, this is actually inappropriate. Like you're not going to war, right? I mean, you're an organizational structure from top down with a chairman of the board leading the management style, which is fear for physical or emotional abuse. So that was number 5. Any comments before we move on to 6?
I just shake my head at this one, because in Scientology, there's a belief. L. Ron Hubbard said that if you want somebody to stop doing something or start doing something to be compliant, that the things that stops them from doing it is because of their reactive mind, is what he said. And so you have to apply pressure, enough pressure on that individual, more pressure than their reactive mind can apply on them. So it justifies verbal and physical abuse in that way, in that, well, I was just applying pressure. I just needed to apply more pressure than their reactive mind. It's another one to me now, looking at that years later that is just mind boggling. And that was the justification. And that is part of the mind control, because you see this happening and it doesn't feel right. But then the mind control comes in. Oh, L. Ron Hubbard say, apply more pressure than the person's bank, he called it, their reactive mind can apply on them. You have to apply more pressure than that. And then it justifies it, even though in your gut, it just, it doesn't feel right. How can, if the purpose of Scientology, if the aims of Scientology is to create a world without war, without insanity, why would you treat your own parishioners like that, your own members who work pretty much for free for Scientology? Why would you be physically and emotionally abusive towards them if what we're trying to create is a world where nobody does that? Why and how do we continue to treat people that way, yet we claim, on the other hand, that we're creating a new civilization?
And
But those things
right.
you're not allowed to think about it.
Well, it's a violation of the golden rule. You wouldn't want to be screamed at, yelled at, you know, uh, and you shouldn't do that to other people.
Mm,
There's a way to communicate to people that's in the spirit of the golden rule. Communicate with them in a non-judgmental way, very matter-of-fact way, very compassionate way, not globally rating them or overgeneralizing them as an evil person, not demonizing them, and no extreme behavior. I mean, that's just common decency. But what happens with this, like you say, apply more pressure than the reactive mind itself applies? What that does is, I call it um, oh, I forget what I call it. It's basically a double whammy. Um, it's how panic attacks work. What
mhm,
happens is, what LRH called reactive mind. He wasn't the original ideast of that. There's secondary emotions like anger, which
Alexa,
are
stop. Sorry, Alexa's reminding me to take out the garbage that I don't need to take out anymore.
oh, that's hilarious. You know, when you have a surprise, that's a primary emotion, right? Someone says surprise, and you immediately
Yeah.
get shocked, right? That's what you would call a pre-conscious uh, reaction. But then there's a secondary reaction, which usually comes with a evaluation of the shock. That shouldn't, must not, ought not, better not, shouldn't have happened, right? So that comes with an evaluation and interpretation. And that's a secondary emotion. So anger is a secondary emotion. Why? Because you judge the primary emotion of shock being not okay. And
Mm,
so you have these like anxiety. If you have the feeling of anxiety, that may be a pre-conscious thing where you're like, I don't know why I'm afraid, but I all of a sudden feel this anxiety coming. But if you have evaluated that anxiety is awful and I shouldn't feel anxiety right now, I should not be afraid or I should not be angry, then all of a sudden you have anxiety about your anxiety. That's two
yes.
layers. That's that double whammo, right? I shouldn't. And so when you're going to have a abuser scream at you for behaving wrong or doing something wrong, that contributes to your anxiety about your anxiety. And when you have that double layer of anxiety, that's when many times your preconscious mind is actually believing it's dying. And so people report feelings of their extremities going numb, their lips going numb, their fingers and toes going numb. They hyperventilate, they can't get on top of their breath. And so you fight the anxiety, and that's the dumbest thing you can do, because then that's when you have panic attacks, and you could actually die. You could actually hyperventilate to the point of taking in more carbon than oxygen. And so it my whole point in saying all that is saying never is it appropriate to scream or threaten to fight or hit or anything like that anyone who's struggling. What they need is our compassion, our understanding, our patience. That's how a father will deal wisely with a child, lest their child view them as the abuser and want to hurt them.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, I think, are we on number 6? All
Yep.
right. This is what is called bankrupt the believer abuse. Scientology, by the way, if you're just joining us, these are items that Aaron I challenged him to focus on what are the abuses that you're protesting against. You need to get really clear on that. It'll help everybody else if you could just put this in writing, write it down, and so those who can read it can run with it and have their kind of why they protest and join you. Scientology operates a relentless predatory financial machine that never stops demanding money from its members, while the organization itself sits on billions of dollars in tax-exempt reserves and offshore accounts. Members are bombarded daily with calls, letters, events, and one-on-one regging sessions to pay for courses, auditing, books, donations to the International Association of Scientologists, Ideal Org buildings, library campaigns, endless new status levels, refusal is labeled counter intention or out ethics, and people are threatened with loss of service, family disconnection, or being declared suppressive. The pressure is so intense that members remortgage their homes, drain college funds, max out credit cards, declare bankruptcy, often multiple times just to stay, quote, on the bridge. Meanwhile, the church itself hoards an estimated $3 billion in cash and real estate, spends lavishly on leaders, refuses to refund money even when members leave. This is not a voluntary giving. It's a systematic high-pressure extraction dressed up as religious donation. And the result is thousands of ruined financial lives on one side and obscene, untaxed wealth on the other. Let's play, I believe, clip number 6. Clip number 6. He expands a little.
Would not be to Scientology costing money, or even that it's sort of on a pay-for-service basis, but the predatory nature of the demands for donations, far and above anything that even has to do with paying for Scientology. You know, there's paying for this and paying for that and donating for this and donating for that. Like it just becomes a nonstop demand for money that honestly has nothing to do with even paying for your Scientology bridge. So, but the nonstop and also the falsity of it. Here's what I mean. When someone donates money to Harvard, they already know Harvard has about $50 billion in the bank. They're donating because they want to. But Scientologists are led to believe that every dollar they're pressured to donate is vital to the existence of Scientology. And they have no idea how much money Scientology has in the bank. It's actually not shared with anybody. Like when I found out after working for Scientology for 30 years that there was over $1 billion in the bank, like I was so angry. Like you might be like, well, what's wrong with an organization having $1 billion? Nothing, except I thought we had almost zero. Specifically to physical healing.
Whoops.
You know, that must be such a contrast, a dichotomy to be in the Sea Org, for example, working on $47.50 a week, working 100 hours on average, not having access to really good health care, not being able to buy nice clothes or even have the time in the week where you could dress up and go somewhere fun, not having access to your own transportation in some cases, and then be able to know that these are billionaires. And the way celebrity Scientologists, public Scientologists, the special treatment for high-level executives in the organization, it has got to be something you have to probably trick your mind in again and again to say, no, I'm a monk or I'm a nun. I signed up for this. I'm going to flog myself. I'm going to live in volunteer poverty because somehow it allows me to have a greater afterlife and perpetuity if I suffer now. And that you would have to lie to yourself all the time because your desires are basically ignored and you see everyone else winning around you while you and your fellow peers fail and live in poverty. It's an awful thought.
Yeah, the financial abuse in Scientology is no joke. I can remember, this is after I left the Sea organization and I was what's called a Scientology public. So I was paying for services. And a few times, I remember being out with my husband at the time and our kids, and we had gone to a movie, and then we were headed home. And this happened a couple of times. And there was a car in our driveway. And we knew, or my husband and I knew, maybe not the kids, like that is a Scientology registrar. It's somebody there basically to hit us up for money. Usually it's for the International Association of Scientologists. And we knew when they were in town, and they wouldn't call or ask to come over. They would always just show up and demand money. And we just kept driving. We were like, nope, not going home. Who wants some ice cream is what we told the kids, and headed somewhere else. And that happened more than one time. They'd even show up to our house and I'd be home. And I remember telling my kids, because my daughter at the time, I forgot how young she was, but she wasn't like an older teen. She might have been like 10 or 11. And I'm like, all right, everybody, we're going to play a game. Hide. It's like how people joke about hiding from, Jehovah's Witnesses or other people going door to door. And this was my best day in Scientology. This is when I was an active, full-blown Scientologist. I was still hiding from them in that way. And it was years before my daughter understood that, because I couldn't really tell her, because I would be then speaking ill of Scientology. But we both my husband at the time felt that. And so many people have ended up in financial ruin because of it. Or how many Sea Org members, like Rosemary, Mike Brown's mom, on Mike Brown's channel, he has shared his mom's story where credit cards were gotten in her name as a Sea Org member and completely racked up and given to Scientologists to buy Scientology services or to make donations. And then she was stuck with the bill as an elderly woman who was not well. This is also, I agree completely, that made one of these top 7 reasons of why he's protesting.
It's interesting that he's doing this. Aaron is writing these things down because if you go back to the Great Reformation, and if there's any Catholics, they don't like the Reformation because it was reformed against the Catholic Church. But during the 1517, the 1500s, there was this thing called indulgences, where priests would essentially sell. They would receive money for the forgiveness of sins, if that makes sense.
Mm,
Like the more money you have, the more I'm likely I'm going to be able to uh, forgive your sins. And actually, in the New Testament, there's a story of Jesus turning over tables of the money changers, and then turning over the chairs of where the doves were sold. So these money changers had tables with coins on them, and then they had another table next to them with doves on them. And so for Jews to actually make a sacrifice, they had to buy the temple approved dove. And so here Jesus comes in, makes a whip. It's pretty awesome. Actually, we always see Jesus as this peaceful guy, but he just straight up went in there, turned over tables. And in the book of Mark, I believe it says, and he turned over the chairs of where the doves were sold. So he didn't harm the animals, but he did throw the chairs over. And all that to say, why? For the forgiveness of their sins, they received money. And how is that any different? I mean, this is a tale as old
mhm.
as time. Scientology is doing the same thing. Like, if you give X amount of money, like I think of the Duggins, Trish Duggan, her ex-husband, they
Yeah.
give you generational credit for your great grandkids going up the bridge to total freedom. So like it's you get to bank some things, not always, but
Mhm.
sometimes they do. You basically pay it forward for future generations. It's just an awful practice that is a tale as old as time. And it really does devastate. What is money for? It's to change your family tree for the better. It's to leave an inheritance. There's a scripture that says, a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. That money could go to better your descendants, but instead you're literally throwing it away. What a tragedy. Uh,
I agree.
we got one more. Is this the last one? Number 7. What was the 7th one? Okay, the fair game abuse. Oh, by the way, I think we have him talking about number 6. Play clip number 6. I apologize.
No problem.
Oh, wait,
Objection
no,
would not
we did already play that, right?
Mhm.
All right, let's play. I think we did. Let's play number 7 now.
think. I'm sure you're aware, Brooks, that Scientology says L. Ron Hubbard canceled the practice of labeling people fair game. And yeah, he canceled the practice of labeling them, but he says our policies on how we treat them are the same. Someone like a Sea Org member, falsely making criminal complaints, like that's what it comes down to. Like they're just lying.
And this is a good point. You know, the person that is basically charging Aaron with wrongdoing, you can remove the video now, is basically saying that he had respiratory issues. That's, you know, that's a lie.
Because
Uh, we got technical issues there. And I've seen that even the fair game tactics happen to our team. Let's go ahead and read the seventh and final fair game portion of the abuses that's worthy of protest. Scientology officially claims it canceled fair game in 1968, but in practice, the policy lives on stronger than ever. Anyone who speaks out, ex-members, journalists, protesters, even concerned parents, is targeted with organized harassment, stalking, smear websites, covert surveillance, noisy investigations, and endless lawsuits designed not to win, but to punish and bankrupt. And really the threat of lawsuit here, because I don't think they've sued anyone in a long time, but they always threaten it, including the city right now. They're threatening to sue the city of Clearwater. Private investigators followed critics for years. Fake social media accounts spread lies about their character and sanity. I know I have several websites against me, Brooks Gibbs. Going back to Aaron's writing, employers receive anonymous complaints. Families are bombarded with, quote, dead agent packs full of doctored or out of context documents. These operations are run or approved at the highest levels, including through the Office of Special Affairs, and are justified internally as protecting Scientology. The message is clear: speak against the church and your life will be made hell. And the result is decades of ruined reputation, destroyed careers, terrified silence from people who know the truth but can't afford the price of telling it. And this is not defense. It is institutionalized vengeance dressed up as religious protection. So let's finish the whole letter and see how it ends, if we can. It says, these are not anomalies. They are policy. This is continuing Aaron's writing. Clearwater is Scientology's spiritual headquarters. Our community should not have to live next to an organization that treats children as non-existent, shields criminals, traffics workers, rips families apart, beats its staff, bankrupts its members, and wages war on critics. I urge Scientology leaders, Clearwater residents, local government officials to face these facts. Ignoring them only prolongs the suffering. We will keep protesting peacefully, loudly, and without apology until these abuses stop. And if you're just joining us, again, this is a letter that could be read. It's going to hopefully be in a Tampa Bay Times op-ed, placing his reason why he protests. I really challenge Aaron as a friend to get really focused on why he's doing what he's doing and how to do what he's doing, how to accomplish it. Without that real thoughtful internal evaluation, you really can't be effective. You start getting messy. You start making little tiny micro mistakes that could be interpreted to your fault. And I think that's what he finds himself in right now, just as Brooks, as a friend, looking at Aaron and saying, how did we get here where he's in jail for 7 to 10 days? And he has to now face a jury of his peers and be tried for being accused of battery. And we know he's not a violent person. And we know, of course, he's got, just like all of us, some level of a temper. But when you're in a leadership position and you're saying protesting, you have to really work hard on having control over everything that you think, everything that you say, everything that you do. Change your thoughts, change your words, change your actions to always be on brand and on point, because you are being scrutinized by this institution that has seemingly endless amounts of money to try to trap you and then litigiously go after you to destroy you and the movement that you're a part of. And so I've really challenged him. He's taken the challenge. And I think we are just really proud of Aaron right now during this time, using his time wisely.
I believe so as well. What would you say, are there any tips you can give, or just a few things for people to kind of noodle on? How do you do that? Because it's one thing to say that. How, like, what are some ways that we can all maybe use some tools to get there, in being able to do that more effectively, and being able to not take the bait, and being able to, like you said, be focused on our message and not distracted by the drama of that confrontation, like with what happened with Aaron. What Scientology tries to do is tie people up legally, keep them busy in courts. That's the whole goal, is to harass, to try and get them to actually stop talking about Scientology.
I'm so glad you asked, because we actually have a live event that's happening December 6th, which is nonviolence works, nonviolence protest, nonviolent activism. It actually works. It has through history. And I'm going to be teaching with some other people that are in the protesting world around the world. I'm going to be teaching a whole workshop that's 3 hours online on November 6th. I'll just read it. Yeah. Nonviolent
Or
protest is
December 6th. December 6th.
Sorry, what did I say? December 6th.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's the day after the memorial for Lisa McPherson. It'll be that next morning. Nonviolent protest is history's most effective tool for exposing abuse, forcing change, and by staying strictly nonviolent, even under attack, we turn the aggressor's violence into our greatest asset. Every act of restraint actually shocks the public conscience. It converts neutral observers actually into our allies. It builds unstoppable moral pressure on officials who depend on public consent. From Gandhi to Dr. King, the side that keeps its fist down wins the broader community and isolates the oppressor. In this online training event, we will master the practical tools, emotional regulation, de-escalation, and disciplined messaging that transform righteous anger into lasting transformative power. You can register for this free event at stopscientology.com. Simply click at the very top. There's a little banner, and you can register for free. It will be online. Aaron will be there. A bunch of people actually in the Scientology protest community will be there from across the pond, around the world. I'm really trying to bring everyone together to think intelligently on this. I'm going to tell you one of the first lessons during that training, December 6th, that we're going to do. If you want, we want more people to join the protest, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at Stop Scientology, you're going to see in January an app that's an organizing tool, whether you're in LA, whether you're in London, Manchester, whether you're in Clearwater, Florida. If you want to start a group to protest, you're going to get training, actual certification to say, yes, I'm certified, I'm trained in this peaceful, nonviolent protesting. And I'm organized. I can communicate to the people to show up, because a lot of times people just forget on Friday and they need to be pinged. So we're going to make sure that there's tools, text, SMS, as well as an app that everyone can download. But in our first training on December 6th, we're going to teach the ABC theory of emotions that was invented by Dr. Albert Ellis in the 50s. And the ABC theory of emotions is a practical way to understand how emotions work. And it helps you do whatever you're trying to do. In this case, protesting. It helps you endure whatever you're trying to endure. In this case, a provocation from the one you're protesting, whether they're pouring water, whether they're screaming at you, whether it's a visitor who's coming for a Friday night graduation event and they start cussing and dropping F-bombs, screaming in your ear, whether it's the bicycle little guy that's coming up there saying, stop harassing, whatever that dude's name is. What was his name again?
Was he a secure? Oh, Mateo.
Mateo. Yeah, I was thinking Mateo. They have provocation techniques, and you need to understand the ABC theory of emotions, because once you do, you will never again say, Mateo provoked me, or the masked water pourer provoked me. It's their fault that I'm angry. I have to do some unlearning for so many protesters to say, stop saying they make you angry. Go ahead and play the ABC theory of emotions. It's a short clip of me explaining it in front of a live student audience.
This room, say A. Now say B. Now say C. A stands for the aggression. Someone comes up to you and they say, I don't like you. That's the A, the activating event. And immediately after A, C is triggered, and that's your emotional consequence. That hurts my feelings. And we are convinced wrongly that they hurt our feelings. They made us angry because we were doing just fine, enjoying our yogurt, until some random dude comes up to us and says, I don't like you. And then we're flooded with negative feelings. See, I feel, therefore it's real. They made me angry. I call that the illusion of aggression. No one can make you angry. No one can hurt your feelings. No one can upset you. you anger yourself, you upset yourself, you hurt your own feelings. And you say, well, they contributed though. Yes, they were the contributing factor, but they were not the cause to your pain or your suffering. In between A and C is the letter what? B, and that stands for your belief system. It's what do you think about what they say? That's the question. What do you think about what they say? A, activating event, I don't like you. B, your belief system processes what they just said, and if you're a rigid person that demands no one disrespects you, they must not be rude, they better be respectful, they have to invite you to that party, they better not talk bad about you behind your back, you must be respected. If you have a rigid belief system of how people must treat you, based on that rigidity of that belief system, you will have a negative consequence. I don't like you. But it was never about the activating event. That same person that's mean can say the same mean thing to somebody else and they don't care. So it's not the activating event that determines whether someone has an emotional consequence. It is always the belief system that one has about the activating event. And the students that are well adjusted and not hypersensitive and not vulnerable to emotional pain do not live rigidly, they live a more flexible belief system. So someone comes up to them and they say, I don't like you. And the emotionally healthy, well-adjusted person says, I don't really care. I'd like you to be nice, but you don't have to. I'd like to be invited to that thing y'all are doing, but it's a free country. You can invite whoever you want. The flexible, emotionally resilient, well-adjusted student doesn't have high expectations or rigid demands on anybody. They keep their expectations low. They give up the grip of their demands. And they're pleasantly surprised when someone's nice to them.
All right. Yeah. You know, this is what I've been doing for 25 years. I study aggression. I study how it works. Which led me to understand offense, taking offense to something. And I discovered if there's no offense, there's no aggression or conflict. There's no conflict. Conflict exists when offense exists. And offense, what is offense? It's essentially like a fence. It's a boundary that you put. It's an invisible, Jehovian, God-like structure that you build, and you demand that everyone else cooperates according to your rules. It's a fairness construct that you build up in your belief system. And so what we have to do when we do protest training, which I've been wanting to do since I learned about Aaron and all these, incredible people that are, doing protests, and they're so wise to not tell everyone how to protest, right? There's such freedom to protest how you want to protest. But what I would say is someone who's somewhat knowledgeable on this type of topic, we could tell you what not to do. Just like the law tells you, this is a line that you cannot cross, right? This makes you a subject to litigation. This makes you vulnerable to being perceived as the actual aggressor when you know you're the victim and you're wanting to be able to maintain that identity and overcome your victim status, not become the perpetrator. So there is some teaching and training. And if Gandhi and Dr. Martin Luther King, they're the two famous ones, right? That would basically do nonviolent protesting and demonstrations. They would never do their efforts without training. There has to be training. We have to increase our emotional intelligence. We have to raise our EQ because it doesn't come naturally. Your body goes through puberty and it grows without even doing anything. Your body just grows. You get older. But emotional intelligence doesn't work that way. You have to educate yourself in such a way where you can now regulate your emotions and become what I think is meek. Meek may look weak, but it's actually strength under control. And the meek inherit the earth. What does that mean? Meek actually get what they're looking to get. They get what they want, and they get higher levels of responsibility, because if they can manage themselves, they can manage other people. So December 6th, that was just a sample of the type of training, not just from me, but from other people in the Stop Scientology world around the globe that do protesting. I'm trying to be a source of unity so that we can all get super intelligent and we don't find ourselves falling for traps that, frankly, Aaron found himself in and finds himself in right now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm very excited about this. I think it's such a valuable tool. And I think it's been a missing piece that's going to help a lot of people, because whether someone protests or not, I feel that these are tools that can help you in life as well. Anytime we can improve our emotional intelligence, things are just going to end up better. So I love that you're doing this. I'm going to grab a few questions here from the audience. Questions and comments here. Melissa, thank you for becoming a member of Growing Up in Scientology. Really appreciate that support. Paula says, I love that this whole thing has the opposite effect on the community than the cult wanted. I don't think they will ever learn. They will ever learn, Aaron. Agreed. Scooter's anti-cult report says, I'm glad Brooks is working with Aaron on his reactionism. That's time well spent for any protester. And I agree. And I think it's a beautiful thing too, that he's taking the time, that he's taking this to heart, right? That you're having these conversations and talking about, let's really get specific about what we're protesting, and let's provide some tools as well to help everybody so that we can avoid situations like this as much as possible, because Scientology will try. They are extra. They will keep trying. Greg wanted to know what's the address for what was read earlier, and that is stopscientology.com. I know we put it in the chat a couple of times.
And by the way, just a note, there's many websites that are helpful from this whole community. I think of Erica and inscientology.org, that she has labored so hard to educate people on the abuses. And this is not in any way, shape, or form a competitor to that or whatever. This is simply just another tool. Eventually, I think my thought, it came from my brain, basically, in talking with Aaron through this whole process, trying to give him a mechanism to use the 7 to 10 days that he's in jail the wisest, to make the most of this time, to avoid boredom and apply his mind to become better at what he does, sharper at what he does. And as I've tried to help him as a friend and with someone with a lot of knowledge and a lifetime of experience, I said, it'd be good to develop a tool, a web-based tool, a series of courses to basically educate people on how to do this in a nonviolent way that's effective, that ultimately wins the heart of those looking on. That's all protests are for. The mayor, the city council, the media, the citizens are all looking to how protesters behave and how the ones they're protesting, the Church of Scientology, is behaving against them. And we need to be able to do it in such a way where the story's told. They are the abusers. Here's irrefutable proof why. And we are the ones saying enough is enough. Got to stop it.
That is so true. Old Frizz says the Sea Organization might not recruit young kids anymore, but public Scientologists still subject their children to the abusive practices. And that's true. There's, back in my day, gather around for a little back in my day. Back in my day, I mean, there were 10, 11-year-olds in the Sea Organization. It was crazy. Once you could get through the Estates Project Force, it didn't matter how old you were. If you could get through it, which is Sea Org boot camp, you could be a Sea Org member. Vanessa Winbury says, having a grown man harass and physically touch a teenage girl inappropriately as part of the bull baiting training routine is a perfect example of this and happened to me. Very sorry to hear that, Vanessa, but you are absolutely right. Virginia says, cults like Scientology are great for predators because they never have to deal with the justice system. We've seen that time and time again in Scientology. New England Truth says, I hope this invigorates a greater movement against the cult known as Scientology. And Vanessa says she's been watching Aaron's old interviews basically nonstop over the last couple of days. And appreciate that, Vanessa, because that definitely helps Aaron out. It's content creators on YouTube are paid on watch time. So love that you're doing that. Thank you. Monica Unknown says there are videos of people who have been held here and not allowed to have their passports. Yeah, I don't doubt it. Greg Sticker says Jenna's story is a true testament to the separation between family members that is rife with Scientology. Very true. I mean, Jenna didn't even grow up with her parents. She didn't live with her parents. And Vanessa says, I would have never had the strength to leave had my mom not passed away. That's huge. Sharon says, I hope Brooks understands the difference he's making.
Thank you.
And Steffi Thee has a question. Can you share the link to Aaron's statement? And do we have permission to send it to our politicians, or should we wait until Aaron's is released so we don't piss off the court?
He has no problem with it being shared. You know, I mean, today was the final day that he finished it. And so we actually still need to give us 24 hours. Hopefully it'll be on the Tampa Bay Times as an op-ed soon. He may be out by the time it's there, but I challenged him to write from jail. I said, Aaron, you know, every once in a while, there's moments in our life that if we don't see the significance of them, we're going to miss out on a real amazing opportunity. Martin Luther King had that when he was in jail in Birmingham, and he wrote Letter from Birmingham. And it's really a study on peaceful protest, specifically laying out the grievances. And of course, Martin Luther, the great reformer, whom Martin Luther King was named after, was the one who nailed a 95 thesis against the modern, or that day in the 1500s, the Catholic Church that was basically fleecing the flock, not feeding the flock. They were through indulgences, taking money from people who were poor unapologetically, all in the name of forgiveness of sins. And so there's moments in your life where you can really be a change agent, but you have to operate on the highest levels that you're capable of. And you have to think clearly, strategically, soberly. And this has really allowed him to do that. So I don't think he's wasted any time. We've heard some phone calls where he's fun and he's joking and he talks about the dude that steals underwear and he says, "Oh, I thought it was free." I mean, you should hear some of the, videos that have come out on his channel this week. It's been fantastic. But he's also been diligent to think deeply about these issues, and I've been there to help him along the way. So we're going to see a better version of Aaron, I think, coming out that I think is really worthy of following, supporting. So I'm very proud of my friend.
That's fantastic. I really appreciate that you're doing that and having these conversations. Thay says, I had the executive director of my org arrive at my house at 4 a.m., wake us up, and he would not leave until we gave him our credit card. He guilted us into saying he couldn't go to bed until he met his quota. Wow. And that was very common too. And people would say that, well, I can't go to bed until I do this. My daughter would call me when she was training from Flag, and it was one of the only times I could talk to her, but she would basically call to try and sell me this or that. But honestly, she told me later, she's like, I was just calling more. I wanted to talk to you, but knew this is the only way I could do it. So I would drag it on like, well, tell me about it, because her conversations were being listened on. There were people there. She could never speak to us alone. Here's a question. Has the Save the Garden campaign been fair gamed or harassed by Scientology?
If you go to the YouTube channel at Save the Garden, you'll see our episode 4. It's actually titled Project Normandy. And in the opening 2.5-minute kind of trailer, it identifies a lot of the fair game tactics that our team has endured. For example, Tony and Jessica, who they own a few businesses downtown Clearwater. They've had constant reports about code violations. They've had death threats on the phone and stuff like this. And the difficulty is we can't correlate it immediately directly with the Church of Scientology. But what they notice is when they weren't part of Save the Garden, a lot of these things were not happening. Once they became part of Save the Garden, these things started to happen. Same thing with Kelly, who's part of our core administrative team. She's been followed. 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 She's We have video footage we actually show in the episode straight from her phone of being tailed by a SUV type police vehicle all the way home. All these intimidation tactics. I myself have had multiple websites and YouTube videos basically saying, who is Brooks Gibbs, and criticizing my education, saying I teach things that damage children psychologically, because I teach kids mental health, but they twist my teachings, and it's just really awful. And when I go speak places, for example, I was going to South Dakota, and someone, we assume it's with the Church of Scientology, called ahead the media saying you shouldn't have Brooks teach. He's a danger to children. Called the superintendent. And, I speak to schools, man. I teach kids stuff. And thankfully, the clients that are called by who we assume to be the Church of Scientology or operatives working on their behalf, our clients say, Brooks, we've known you for 10, 15 years. You got some trolls, man. They're not very good at what they do, trying to get me canceled because it hasn't worked. There has been some opportunities that they have successfully caused some clients to be afraid of, that have cost me up to 6 figures. But I look at that and I say, fine, I don't even want some of those clients. That's fine. We look at all this as badges of honor. It kind of comes with the territory. And we were warned when we started Save the Garden, there will be fair game tactics aimed at destroying your livelihood. And then we just said, well, I hope it doesn't happen. But we have a strong enough core team. My wife and I are inseparable. 25 years we've been married. She got me into this, so it's her fault if anything bad happens. We're good. But yeah, they've tried their darndest, and I'm sure it's just the beginning.
Yeah, probably. Joel, thank you so much for that super sticker. The fight we fight is a marathon, not a sprint. Stay strong. Thank you. Anna from Canada says, sometimes selectively agreeing with someone you disagree with is the start to find common ground, even if you are agreeing with the smallest thing.
That's good. That is a real true diplomat. We have more in common than we have different. And that is always what we should lead with when speaking with Scientologists, for example, who we'd like to win out. We can understand something about them. And it's really important to avoid demonizing people or overgeneralizing, thinking that they're all bad. I quoted something with you last time. There's enough good in the worst of us and enough bad in the best of us. It behooves all of us to have grace with the rest of us. And that's a great old quote.
So true. Lori Marie says, not going to lie, I was upset with Aaron and his temper, but his willingness to work on himself is to be commended. Much respect for him.
It's a humbling thing. It's a real humbling thing to be sitting there. Even though he's in a pretty good environment, he's still being detained. He doesn't have his freedoms to get up and walk out and go see his girls and go to the funeral for that boy that he so longed to go to, or to miss a birthday party. I mean, there's some real deep-hearted, we've seen him cry moments during this whole process, which really humbles a man. And, humility always looks good on you. And that self-reflection time is always healthy. I'm just thrilled he's binge watching The Chosen, which is a story about Jesus. To me, this is all an answer to prayer. I hate to see him in there. But I think there's some hard-heartedness in, that we all need, to kind of open up that hard heart shell and say, okay, I need to be tender again. So yes, I agree. The short fuse is not an admirable personality disposition on anybody. In fact, long suffering is another way to say resilience. And that's what I've specialized in all my years of doing what I do. I help people grow in their ability to suffer long.
That's very valuable. I appreciate so much that you're doing this, that you're having these conversations with Aaron. And it is I think it's a learning experience for all of us, and to avail ourselves of these tools and learn more about it. Like I said, even whether you're protesting or not, I can see how what you're doing on December 6th would be helpful, because there is so much conflict already in the world, and it seems too easy sometimes to just slip into hate or just this constant, just that conflict. And these tools, they sound like Scientology's worst nightmare. I mean, the idea we can get to where, each of us, and we're all works in progress, more and more recognize this and try not to take that bait. And it's very empowering too, as you were saying that. Like, I was like, oh, wow. Because there's not a lot, like, I don't have hatred towards Scientology. I have a lot of disagreement. I have a lot of hurt and trauma, but not hatred, because the people who are there, I was there, and I was following along with the dictates of Scientology because I believed that that's what you're supposed to do. Falsely. It's what I grew up in. It's all that I knew. And many of them, that is the case. That is the situation. They don't know. They believe that they are saving the world and they are saving mankind. They believe that they are mankind's only hope. And it's a good reminder about that, because it is difficult sometimes to see, especially Scientology security or people from the Office of Special Affairs, because we know what they do, but to still see them as individuals and people and humans and our fellow man who should, who do deserve compassion. And it only helps us to be able to give that compassion. And I don't think it's easy. I think it's really hard at times. And I think I really sucked at it at times, but try. But I can also see how that helps me, because I know the more I'm able to let go of, not Scientology or not Scientology, in different situations and scenarios, not give in or lean into the hate or the conflict, but let it pass by, recognize it, the better I am, the more peace I have, that sense of peace and calm that I've been seeking my entire life is in that place of how you described it, of being able to do that. And it's not something that I'm able to do all the time. So I know I'm excited about December 6th.
Yeah.
And we've dropped that link a few times.
Yeah. StopScientology.com. I'm not saying anger's bad all the time. In fact, my hero, Jesus, he said, be angry, but don't sin. And I think that's in the spirit of Jesus. That's what we're doing. We're saying these abuses are worthy of being angry about. And if
Yes.
you're not angry about it, there's something wrong with you morally. You're morally bankrupt, that you're okay with children being indoctrinated, that you're okay with human trafficking and people basically overstaying their visas and forced to work, or fair game tactics to destroy livelihoods. That you're just okay. And there's the apathy is actually the real enemy here. It's made of a Latin word that says a, which means without, and pathy is emotion, passion, or interest. So to be without emotion, passion, or interest is apathetic, which is pathetic. It is absolutely not the way you want to be. You want to have emotion, passion, and interest, but you want it to be measured. You have to be governed. You have to have a seatbelt on that anger. And so what I'm trying to introduce to the protesting community and those who really are in this fight is what does that seatbelt look like? And I'll just mention real quick, Martin Luther King, he had everybody trained, and he actually had them sign a card before they went out and protested. And here was the 10 items. I won't read all of them, but this is some of the things that were on that card. I will meditate daily on the teachings and the life of Jesus, or on the principles of nonviolence if they're from different faith backgrounds. So they, of course, said Jesus. The fact that he's watching The Chosen is kind of cool, because he's seen how at least the Hollywood portrayal, or the Utah Mormon betrayal, I don't know who's really behind that, but be that as it may, it's showing basically red letters, the New Testament version of Jesus and how he interacted with his critics. Number two, remember always that nonviolent movement seeks justice and reconciliation, not victory over opponents. Walk and talk in the manner of love, for God is love, and sacrifice personal wishes in order that all men might be free. It goes on, but he had them sign 10 items, and we too are going to suggest, it's not obligatory, right? I kind of always operate, always an invitation, never an obligation. You know what I mean? But I'm going to suggest that they agree to a certain way of carrying themselves when they are in the posture of protest. That way, they will never be accused of wrongdoing, and they will always be above reproach. And I think that will help us in the long run.
I agree as well. Catherine says, personally, I don't think any of us get to judge Aaron. What he does every day is gut wrenching. To face your abuser all the time is one of the hardest things we can do. It can scramble your being. I get that.
Well, I think it's cause, pain into purpose, right? I mean, I sometimes
Mhm.
wonder, I sometimes wonder, and this is not, I don't know how people are going to respond to this. So I'm really taking a risk. I'm just asking everyone to be mature for a hot second. Who would Aaron be without Scientology? In other words, we have become to love this man, Aaron. We've come to really appreciate him. He's not perfect. Yeah, he makes mistakes sometimes, but man, he is on mission, and he's smart, and he's putting his hand to the plow, and he's not looking back. He is moving forward to end Scientology, to stop Scientology's abusive practices. But who would he be without it? And so, in other words, you can look, I think a real healthy person says, you know what? I wouldn't wish what I went through on my worst enemy, but if I had to live all over again, I'm not sure I would change a thing because I love who I've become, flaws and all.
Mhm.
I really do. And I really love that. And I think Aaron, we have to ask him that question. Well, who would Aaron be without Scientology? And if you had to do it all over again, would you walk the same path? A real healthy, I think, person who is memorialized, which means unconditional acceptance and appreciation for what you've gone through. That's what memorial services are all about. Not talking about how bad the guy was, but how good he contributed to our lives. A real healthy, memorialized fifth stage of grief individual that is on the road to healing can look back and say, yeah, it has really allowed me to become an overcomer. I see that in you, Natalie, and that's why we love you as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, thank you so much. We've dropped links a few times, including for those who want to financially help Aaron. The mods have been dropping links for that as well. And I do believe it's in the description of this video. And I hope to see you guys too on the 6th. Tomorrow, I'm going to be I'm going to have William Good's going to be on Scientology Audit Streets LA. So join us tomorrow night for that. There'll be a
Aaron
notification
was
out
so,
tomorrow.
did you hear how giddy he was when he heard that Streets LA is going to be on? Wee! He was so excited. He was really humbled by it. And so that's a very exciting turn of events.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I can't wait to hear what he has to say. Thank you so much, Brooks. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so thankful and grateful and look forward to chatting with you more.
All right, Natalie, keep up the good work, girl, because I know you work a full-time job and you run and you did this, but he's like a brother to you and you're there. There's a scripture that says a friend loves at all times, but a brother, wow, a brother's born for the days of adversity. And that's what we want to be to Aaron. We want to be a brother, a sister, because when crap hits the fan and he's under attack, a sister like you with a fierce, unstoppable love. Think of Farrell, Cheryl. Think of Erica. Think of all the people that have come.
Yeah.
Jenna. I mean, it's amazing. The loving kindness, the brotherly love that you've shown. It's really praiseworthy. Good work.
Yeah, I appreciate that. All right, everybody, we will talk to you later. And thank you to everybody who stays till the very end.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not,